Hi everyone. Welcome to HED Talks. Today's kind of a special one. I've never done this before. It's going to be different. I've never done anything like this before. So the reason why I'm doing this is going to be, we're in our series on the human brain. And we've covered an awful lot. To wrap it up, we're going to do a series review.
Is there a quiz?
No, well, we'll see. We'll see. Yeah, we'll see. When I started this 8 years ago, I promised never to give you homework and never to give you a test. Because I knew I would never get you back, you would never come back. Yeah, so there was that agreement. I do all the work, and you just come and listen. That was our agreement. So I've kept up with that agreement, yes. Yes, exactly. But this one was important, I thought. I thought there was a lot of information throughout the series that was really, really good and important for you to know and remember. And so what I want to do is I'm going to drive it home, okay? We're just going to drive it home, and we're going to take a look at everything that we've covered about the brain, but we're just going to hit the highlights, the most important parts. So are you ready to go?
Yeah.
All right, let's get going here. All right, so the first thing we did, you probably remember this, it was only 4 or 5 weeks ago, was that we, right off the bat, right away, we wanted to take care of a couple of myths. Do you recall?
Yes.
Do you recall? All right, the first myth. We only use 10% of our brain. False. All right, so it sounds very clear to me that you have really gotten that message loud and clear. I found that so important because I do not want you to walk around thinking you're functioning on half a brain, let alone 10%. All right, because that simply isn't true. How much of your brain are you able to utilize?
All of it.
All of it, every single bit of it. And we know this now because we have what? We have imaging, right? And we can see what's going on in the brain. So is there any part of your brain that is never activated? No, there's not. We have situations where there's a low-level stimulation and your CT scan would look like this, right? Mm-hmm. But there are other situations where you're highly stimulated and your brain looks like, wow. Is there any part of your brain here, well, except this little part here is kind of sleeping. That's just taking a little break. But is your whole brain being activated?
Yes.
Does that look like 10%? No. You are not functioning on 10% of your brain. You have your brain's full capacity. And then the other thing that we talked about that is not true, we often hear that you're either dominant in your left hemisphere or your right hemisphere. Is that true? No, it's not true. It is definitely not true. We are told that creative people use their right brain and left brain people are analytical. Those are our bookkeepers, our scientists. Engineers, things like that. Yes, exactly. And then artists, writers, creative people are right brain. But how many times do you have situations where it's clearly evident that you need strength in both? In your whole brain, your analytical and your creative. So your whole brain is active in that, right? Yes. All right, so again, you're not walking around with half a brain.
Not everybody.
All right? There's no pea brains in here. No pea brains. No, we don't have any of those. We don't have any of those. But what was true? What was true was that our bodies are controlled hemispherically, correct?
Yep.
So the right hemisphere controls,
The left side.
all right, and then vice versa, all right? And so that is the thing that is true. That is what is hemispherical. All right, so I think we've got that pretty well solidified, right?
Yep.
All right, we all understand that. Good, good, good. We took a look at different parts of the brain, right? But we kind of focused on the frontal lobe and the occipital lobe, and we'll just cover that a little bit again today. But mainly, the idea that we want driven home is, who is the boss?
The brain.
The brain is the boss. The brain is the boss.
Well, that's the brain.
I thought it was my wife. Did everyone hear him? I thought it was my wife. And then Pat said, well, that's the brain. Ah, you guys. All right, so now, Conrad, I have completely lost my train of thought. I don't know what I was going to say.
The brain is in charge.
The brain is in charge. The reason why it's important to know that the brain is in charge is because of this. The reason why I spent so much time on it is, if we're learning about the brain and you're learning that you have full capacity and you're learning about the different ways you can exercise that great muscle in your head, then can it affect all of you, not just your thoughts? Can it affect all of you?
Yes.
It can affect all of you. All right? So understanding the brain and understanding what you're capable of is going to help you. You can try. Now you can try and apply these things that you've learned in a real way, in a real beneficial way. And that's what I'm hoping for you. Here's another one that I felt was really important. We talked about the fact that we have a primal brain, right?
Yep.
So we originally have a primal brain, and that was really, really useful when we needed to react instinctively, right?
Yeah.
All right, but do we need to do that anymore?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes, that's true, Trudy. Yes, sometimes we do need to do that, but we needed more as we evolved. Our brains did as well, correct?
Yeah.
All right, so we've got our primal brain, and that's where we have knee-jerk reactions, right? Fight or flight. But then we have what's called our modern brain, and that is the what?
Slowly.
So you're in
The frontal lobe, right?
Hello.
That's the front.
Yes, that's the frontal lobe. That's what evolves over the amygdala, the primal brain. And what does that give us?
Reasoning.
Breathing.
Yeah,
Control.
yeah. Does that make us more civilized?
Not necessarily. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, kinda.
Or does it at least give us the capacity to be more
There
civilized?
you go.
it does.
All right, it's available.
Yeah.
Some of us don't use it, but it's available.
That's it.
Okay, all right, so that's how that goes. All right, now we've got the modern brain. We know that it's there, but if we're reacting instinctively, if something emotional happens and it's not a threat where we have to run, but it's something we want to think our way through, we have a little problem. Because where does that hit first?
Primal.
Yes, in the primal brain. And when your primal brain is in action, your frontal lobe, your modern brain, it shuts down. It shuts down so that your primal brain, so that your central nervous system can totally zero in on what you have to deal with. So everything else, have you ever been in a situation and you felt like it was a dream or it was somebody else or you were looking at yourself doing something because it was that intense? That's because everything is shutting down and it's your primal brain that's dealing with it. But let's say you want to get to your frontal lobe. You want to think your way through this problem, not just react. What do you need to do?
Breathe.
Excellent. Very good. That was like 5 weeks ago.
That was very good. Yeah.
Very good. Yes, you need to breathe, because what are you trying to get going again in your modern brain? What do you need up there?
You need to be able to concentrate and think it through.
Oxygen. Excellent. Because remember, the oxygen shuts down. So it's not doing what it normally does. You have to get the oxygen. You have to breathe. So when someone says to you, count to 10, or tell yourself, count to 10, that is an actual beneficial piece of advice. Count to 10.
Quick question.
Yes.
Do you think that explains road rage?
The primal brain?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes, I think road rage, any kind of rage. Well, I will say this though. They have found in a study of like abusive husbands.
Uh-huh.
They're abusive wives too, but they studied abusive husbands. And they found out that in many, many of the cases, there was damage to the frontal lobe. There was damage to, it was consistently showing up that there was some damage to the frontal lobe. But when we act out of rage, if we just act impulsively, all right, we're acting from our primal brain. We don't take a few deep breaths and then reach the frontal lobe and say to ourselves, I do believe it would be very satisfying if I took off my shoe and threw it at that person. We don't do anything like that. That's not how that happens, right? You take your shoe off and you throw it at somebody, and then later on you regret
Then
it,
you're worried about
right? Then you're like, oh,
Then you lost your shit.
I shouldn't have done that. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. I wish I hadn't done that. So what we want to do to be more in control is know this. Now you know how it works. You know, if you're feeling angry, before you say that thing that you can't ever take back, before you throw the shoe, just take some deep breaths, all right? Just take some deep breaths, and then you can deal with it a little bit better. Now that you have this information. Isn't this really good information?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh,
It's
I
very,
understand.
very good information. So then we had a natural bridge from the amygdala, from the primal brain. We had a natural bridge over to something else that we kind of always have a misconception about, and that is,
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
right?
Love the others.
Yes,
Stress.
stress. All right, now you probably remember that I shared with you that there is a difference between stress and
Distress.
distress. Excellent. Yes, that plays into this reaction, this impulsiveness that some of us experience from time to time. And it's stress. The word stress is misunderstood these days because really we know that there is such a thing as good stress, right?
Yes.
So what we would call stress that would cause us worry and concern is really distress. When you're in distress, that's when you need help. And I shared with you the Harvard Medical School study, right?
Mhm.
And what they found was that our belief about stress affects us physically. So if we think, oh, I'm feeling stressed, this is bad, does that affect your physical health?
Yes.
It does.
You're gonna feel bad.
You're going to feel bad. But if you start to feel stress and you're thinking to yourself, all right, this is good, I'm getting ready, I'm going to be able to deal with this is helping me get, then is that going to affect your physical health?
Yes, in a
But in
positive way.
a positive way. Exactly. So if you start to feel this, I have to talk to somebody, it's a hard conversation, I don't want to have this conversation, but I have to have it, and my hands are sweaty, and I'm feeling a little knots in my stomach. What is that doing for you? It's getting you ready to deal with this task that you have to do that you don't want to do. It's preparing you. Do you know I've been doing head talks every Wednesday for 8 years? Do you know that every Wednesday for 8 years,
You get stressed.
I am nervous and I'm a little nauseous. I get a little bit of, oh my God, I'm going to be terrible, I'm going to be terrible. I get a little anxiety. But if I didn't feel that, and it's not just, I do Monday lectures too. I stand up here for an hour memorizing an hour's worth of, I mean, that's stressful, right? If I didn't, thank you. If I didn't feel that, I would worry. I don't worry because I feel it. I would worry if I did not feel it. If I didn't feel it, I'd feel like, oh, I'm probably not prepared. I don't care enough. So I'll have you all know, I care very, very much.
To the point of.
To the point of like, oh my gosh, it's Wednesday, 2:45. Oh no. Oh. But yeah, so then I get in here and I'm fine because you're you're just lovely. Thank you for being so wonderful to me. Okay, yes, you are. You're so nice to me. I appreciate it. All right, so we know that there's a difference between stress and distress, and we took a look at those things, all right? So just know that there are times when you can welcome those feelings and know that they're there to help you. It's there to help you, to prepare you, all right? Distress, when it's overwhelming, that's when you want to get some help. Do something. You want to do something because that is not a good thing. Okay, so we did some brain basics, okay? And we just love the frontal lobe, don't we? We talk about the frontal lobe all the time. I managed to sneak that into just about any subject, and so we're very familiar with it, right?
Yeah.
Yes, that's where all your executive functioning is. Use that. I want you to be so aware of that's right there for you, and to be aware of it. And we also talked a lot about the occipital lobe because what we see is very limited. Remember that? And to know that what we see is very narrow and very specific, will that leave your mind a little bit more open to other possibilities? It does, doesn't it? It leaves your mind open because I have an intellectual knowledge of the fact that I just see a very little slight sliver of things that are detectable. I can't see very much at all. And so I'm open. I want to be open to other possibilities. All right, we know how we see. It's light reflects on the cones in our eyes. We have 3 colors plus the rods that help us to see in grayscale, correct? All right, and so we see the spectrum, but this spectrum is only a very tiny percentage of all detectable light. Yeah. So we realize that we really cannot see a lot. And then even at that little bit of light, what do we do? What percentage of what we can see do we see?
Small amount.
A very small amount. A very small amount. And then I have another version, okay? Let me see if you, if there's people here that were not here for the first version of this. So don't say anything. But if you had a version of this, you'll catch on. But let's just play this.
Key business illusion. Count how many times the players wearing white pass the ball. The correct answer is 16 passes. Did you spot the gorilla? For people who haven't seen or heard about a video like this before, about half missed the gorilla.
Oh, I saw the gorilla. Yeah.
If you knew about the gorilla, you probably saw it. But did you notice the curtain changing color or the player on the black team leaving the game?
I saw a curtain change color.
Let's rewind and watch it again. Here comes the gorilla, and there goes a player, and the curtain is changing from red to gold.
Huh.
I was just looking at the ball.
When you're looking for a gorilla, you often miss other unexpected events.
So the first time we did it, remember we had the kids jumping rope
Yes.
and a man in a chicken suit walked through
Yeah.
and nobody saw him.
No.
No one saw him. How many people here saw the gorilla? See, yeah, so not everybody saw the I mean, there was a gorilla that walked through. But if
We were looking at the balls.
that's exactly. So you were given a task for which you had to focus, and that's count how many times the players in the white shirts passed the ball. And you were so focused that even though a gorilla walked through, some people didn't see it. And last time, because you've already had this, so now you're kind of ruined for forever now. But last time, nobody saw the chicken. No one saw the chicken because you were focused. So it's a point of awareness, okay? If you only see a fraction of the fraction that you're able to see, should we keep our mind open?
Oh, definitely.
All right, because,
I do think
Sure.
people, there are certain mental conditions where people are aware of everything around them and it's exhausting.
yeah, it would be, that's a great point. Edith is saying there are people that are aware of everything around them and it's exhausting. It's exhausting. Yes, Dennis?
My wife is just like that.
Yeah. You can't get away with anything, can you?
Got that right.
Yeah. So it's just a point of let us stop and take a breath and keep our minds open to other possibilities, because as wonderful and as magnificent as we are, do we know everything? No, we really don't. We really don't. And then I had to go ahead and share with you that of all the matter in all the universe, of all that is known to be out there, how much of that is detectable?
4.6.
4.6%. Oh my gosh. So there's so much more, correct? Yes, there is just so much more. And then we also took a look at depth, remember that? Lights and shadow.
Oh,
Yes, and then I showed you these, several of these. Yeah, those are phenomenal, aren't they?
Scary.
I know. Yes, it looks like a xylophone. All right, and then we moved on to memory, and I want to share this with you. We want to highlight a lot of things here, because is memory something that is concerning for people once they reach a certain age? Yes, it's concerning, and it's not so much memory as it is the loss of memory. Yes, the loss of memory. And so what we did was we talked about the fact that, I'm going to show this to you if we have time at the end, okay? The fact that Eric Kandel, Dr. Kandel, actually mapped and showed, and I have it on video, I can show it to you, all right? But I have to get out of my presentation in order to do it. He actually shows you in real time the formation of a memory. The formation of a memory. Is that astounding? Yes. So if you want to, at the end, stay, I'm going to show that to you. All right? I have it queued up. All right? And it won't
Hope
take.
I can remember.
You leave that to me.
Okay.
All right,
I need
leave
to
that.
stay.
Yes, I'll be just like, stay, Dennis, stay. And, right, that'll work?
All right.
All right. Okay, so I'm going to show you the actual formation of a memory. First time it was ever seen. It is the most remarkable thing. When you know what you're looking at, it's just mind-blowing. It's incredible. Absolutely incredible. We talked about how memories are encoded in the brain, and it was fascinating to know that memories are encoded where? Excellent, Conrad. Yes, in many different places. In many different places. So it ties into the fact that you use all of your brain, and now you can add to that knowledge that memory is stored in all of your brain. All right, so it's important to know, if memory is stored in different places, do you have access to those places?
Yeah.
Yes, yes, you definitely do. All right, so there's different kinds of memories, but we wanted to highlight 3 of them. All right, short-term, working, and long-term memory. Okay, so in our working memory, we're just on what? Autopilot. Exactly. If we want to remember things, we want to take our information that we've received and we want to get it settled into where? Yes, into the long-term memory. And now that we know that we use all of our brain, it's all functioning, it's all there for you, can we utilize that to put memories into our long-term? Yeah, yes. And we can use our senses in order to do that, correct? All right, so the fastest route to the brain is through your sense of smell. So if you're someplace that's important to you and you're thinking, I want to make sure I remember every minute of this, everything about this that's happening to me right now, what are you going to do?
Take a deep breath.
Take a deep breath. Be aware of the fact that I can put this into my long-term memory if I'm using every area of my brain, if I'm intentionally smelling the smells, touching the textures, looking at all of the sights, if I'm hearing the sounds, okay? We're going to utilize as much as our brain as possible to strengthen the memory. And let me show you something for just a couple of minutes, because this is actually 3 hours long. Ooh, that's loud. If you were there, what would you be doing to remember that, being in that place?
Looking at the colors.
Yes, the colors were beautiful, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Were there textures to feel? Water, petals of flowers?
Yeah,
Were there scents
with the flowers.
that,
definitely.
yes, we heard music, but if you were in that spot, what might you be hearing?
Water. Birds singing.
Exactly. And so you know that if you intentionally utilize all of your senses, would that solidify in your memory? Yes, it would. It would. So do that. Be intentional. Be more intentional about what you're experiencing, what you're living. We also played some brain games, remember? Yeah, that was fun. We played some brain games. we had mnemonics, and that was useful. It can be useful, all right? Have you ever heard this one? Every good boy deserves fudge. I guess it depends. It would depend on if you played a musical instrument or not, right? Yeah. So that was a famous one that helped people to remember notes. And then we also did word association games. Remember that? Vaguely. You vaguely remember that? Word association games. These are things that you can be doing. You can be doing these things every day. It takes just a couple of minutes. Exercise your brain all the time. You can always. There's always something you can do. Remember my little game about adding up numbers on a license plate? Yeah. So even if I'm driving in a car, I'm the passenger. I can just be looking at all the license plates, and very quickly in my head, I'm adding them all up and reducing them down to the lowest denominator. So I'm using my brain, even though I'm just sitting there in a car. All right, do you remember the memory mapping? Memory mapping and connecting that, it's a trick to connect to your long-term memory. So you are going to take short-term memory information and you're going to apply it to your long-term memory. You have to remember this guy.
Yeah,
He was so impressive, wasn't he?
very.
He was very, very impressive. So he took the serial numbers off $4 bills, right?
Yeah.
And he was able to remember
Oh.
all of it in order correctly. He named it off. And I remember saying to you, he uses memory mapping, and there's no one in this room that is not able to do what he did, and not one of you believed me.
Still don't.
You still don't believe me?
I could not do that.
You could are you sure you could never, ever, ever do that?
Absolutely.
All right, well, I thought I would put that to the test. Oh, I said that word that I'm not supposed to say.
You're fired.
A test, I'm gonna get fired. All right, it's an easy test though, but I thought what I want to do is I want to illustrate to you what it is that he's doing. He talked about it, right? He said, what I do is I picture a symbol. All right, he said a cat is symbolic of the number 9 because it has 9 lives, and 4 is symbolized by a car because it has 4 doors. He obviously doesn't drive sports cars.
Yeah.
But anyway, but that's fine, so that's okay. And then he places those symbols that represent a number in his home. All right, but that's very vague. So I thought maybe I would show you what he's doing, and it might help you to understand not only what he's doing, but that you too could do it. All right, what's this? Where are we?
Living room.
Oh, that's the Hunt
Oh,
Club.
the Hunt Club.
Look at that. I have the Hunt Club. Are you familiar with Hunt Community and all its rooms?
Most of them are.
Yeah, you know where everything is, right? All right, so we're going to do some memory mapping of our own using a space that we're all familiar with. All right, and this time we're only going to remember 4 numbers. See how easy I'm making this for you? All right, so we're going to use these numbers, 9, 4, 2, 3. And I used our friend's first 2 numbers, okay, because we're familiar with that. So 9 is going to equal cat, 4 is going to equal car. And I thought, have you ever heard the expression, it takes 2 to tango?
Yeah.
Yes. And third time's the charm. So 2 in tango, will that make sense to you?
Yeah.
And 3 in charm, will that make sense to you?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so now I'm going to guess that I think you can remember these 4 numbers in their sequence.
Yeah.
All right, because you're all being invited down to HED Talks because there's somebody special waiting for you there, okay? All right, so there's a special guest waiting for you in the theater for a HED Talk. So let's go from the entrance down to the theater. Are you ready?
Yeah.
What number is that?
9. 4.
All right, so we're getting through the floor. We have to go down the stairs now. Do you see?
Yeah.
Yeah, Lucky Charm.
All right, so what's Lucky Charms? 3.
Cereal.
All right, so what's the number?
9423.
All right?
Yeah, but why did you want to remember numbers on a bill? It's a waste of time.
You were very impressed by it.
No.
He was making a point.
Yes, he was making a point that you can remember things. You can apply that to anything, and if you don't want to apply it to anything, it's an exercise of your brain muscle at the very least. But it can help you. But it can help you to remember. But the other thing I want to point out, all right, if you use this technique, you see how silly? But there wasn't a one of you here that thought you had any hope of being able to do what he did. Do you see now how he does it? And do you think that you could do it? Well, except for Pat, of course. Do you think that you could do it?
Yes.
Yes, you can. You can. We all can. We can all do it. There's nothing magic about it. You can all do it. Yes. All right. And then if anyone wants to compliment me on my technical skills,
Oh, good job, good job.
thank you. Okay. So yeah, so it's not that hard. You can all do it. He's not a magician. He's just using this trick. So we talked about normal forgetting, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, normal forgetting, is that something to be concerned about? No. In fact, if you forgot where your keys were, you're probably on autopilot doing something else.
Yes.
All right? That's all that is. Okay? When it becomes concerning is if what? You find your keys, you're looking at them?
What are these for?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, you don't know what they're for. Okay? We looked at the healthy brain and we looked at the diseased brain, and you clearly see the difference, right? Yes. But we had some really good news with this, and the good news was that in order to avoid this plaque entanglement, okay, something that can help us are 5 simple things. Remember the 5 simple things?
Learn something new.
Yes. All right, John, what are they?
Diet, exercise, less stress, new stuff, and I missed one. Exercise, well, sleep.
Oh, he got it. All 5. Excellent. He got all 5 of them. Yes. So we need to get sleep. We need exercise. We need to be careful of what we're eating. We need to reduce or balance the distress in our life. And most important of all is that we need to learn something new. And why is that the most important one?
Stimulates the brain.
Because it gives us cognitive reserve. Remember the cognitive reserve?
Remember the nuns?
Yes, excellent. You remember the nun study. That maybe is the most important thing of the whole series, is that this nun study showed that you can, if you learn new things, what are you going to be doing?
You're still functioning.
You're, yes,
Increasing their
Brain
cognitive
stimulated and alive.
exactly. You're making new neural connections when you learn something new, and even if you have a diseased brain, even if you have the plaque, you can go around it. You can go around it because you've created so many other connections. That's what happened to the nuns in this study. They had diseased brains, but did they show symptoms?
No.
They didn't. They did not show symptoms while they were alive. So they were surprised that they had this. All right? So learning new things, creating those new neural connections are critically important. You're all doing it. Look at you all. That's exactly what you're doing right here. All right? And then we used my granddaughters, remember, to illustrate that point. Yes, my little cupcake heads. And we said that, and I told you a bunch of things about them. But if I just told you their names, what would have happened?
Nothing, we would have forgotten.
Yes, but I told you, because I told you so many different things about them, you started growing all these different branches. And when we came back 2 weeks later, it wasn't even 1 week later, when we came back 2 weeks later,
Still remember.
you remembered a lot of it. Pat, you remembered Sophia
She must be a doctor.
after 2 weeks. Oh my gosh, it was like, that was very, very, very impressive. Really well done. Okay, so that's probably maybe the most important thing. We talked about sleep and dreaming. You remember that one? Sleep and dreaming. Okay, and dreaming is what?
Waves.
Yes, it's a brain wave. Sleeping is a brain wave, and we go through this cycle. All of us, we go through this cycle, and we go through it every 24 hours. But why? Like, why? Why would we go? Why is sleep? Why do we have to sleep? It's a question that has not been fully answered. Now, it's a curiosity because as we were evolving, would it have been dangerous to be asleep?
Yes.
I mean, could it be dangerous now to be asleep if you're with somebody that, like, you know, has impulse control issues and can't take a breath to get to their frontal lobe?
Yes.
I mean, yeah, why do we sleep? All things sleep. And are they at risk and vulnerable when they're sleeping? So in an evolutionary process, does sleeping make sense?
Yes.
Yes, it does.
Well, it doesn't, because it puts you at,
It doesn't.
that's why why do we have to sleep? Why are we sleeping? We could get killed if we're sleeping. Why do we do that? Not only are you sleeping, but when you're dreaming, you're in what? Sleep paralysis, right?
Yeah.
So you're in sleep paralysis. I mean, you're totally vulnerable.
Yeah.
So that's why scientists are wondering, why do we have to sleep? It doesn't seem like it doesn't seem conducive to survival. But we have to. So we know our body is created to sleep, right? We have to do it. And then in the evening hours, we even have something in our brain. What is it?
Melatonin.
Yeah, what does that do?
Puts you to sleep.
It puts you to sleep. Our whole body rhythm is designed in order for us to sleep. And we know that when we sleep, we have a lot of benefits to it, but it also clears out the toxins in our brain that cause that plaque. Remember the plaque? In the entanglement? When we sleep, it clears out the toxins that create that entanglement. So there's a lot of health benefits, but it's not 100% understood because it just puts us so at risk. So it's a curiosity. So is dreaming. Dreaming too is a curiosity. And we've got a couple of ideas out there to find out why it is that we have to dream. One is that before electric light, a lot of our time was spent in what?
Darkness.
Darkness, all right? So we really can't see stuff. Our brain's not that active. And what might happen to the brain if it's not active?
It dies.
Atrophy, excellent. That's perfect, exactly, atrophy. All right, your brain will adapt and it will not be functioning as it should. And so when we dream, do we have the visual activity that we have during the day? Yes, we do. So that's one reason. Another reason why they think we dream is so that we can take the short-term memory of events that happen during the day and try to get them into the what? Try to get them into the long-term memory. So that's another reason why they think that we could benefit from dreaming. And then that brings us to types of dreaming. There are different types of dreaming, right? Yes. And one of those is visualization. We talked about visualization, correct? Yes. So what releases in your brain if you remember an event?
Serotonin?
Yes. If you remember something happy, the same feel-good chemicals that happened when the original event occurred will release in your brain as you're remembering it. Isn't that great?
As you're dreaming.
Well, as you're remembering.
Okay,
Yeah. You can be dreaming, but you don't have to be.
okay.
All right? So anytime, yes, Dennis?
If you're dreaming often, but you never remember your dreams,
Yep.
what's the significance?
A lot of people do not remember their dreams. Yeah, most people do, yeah, unless you just wake up right after a dream and you write it down right away, because you start to forget it, the memory of it fades. So it's not, obviously it's not important that you remember it, but that you have it for the activity that's going on in your brain, and for it to,
So it's happening, but some people don't remember.
Oh, exactly, yes, everybody does dream, but you don't remember, but you might not remember, but you did. You can even tell yourself, I want to remember my dreams when I wake up. Try that. Try it. Yeah, just try. Just try and say, I want to remember my dreams. Yeah, I want to remember my dreams when I wake up in the morning. Okay, or a dream. Start out small. I want to remember a dream. All right, and see if that doesn't work for you. It works for me. All right? All right, so the power of visualization. When you visualize something, even if it isn't an actual memory, does that also secrete the same chemicals?
Yes.
It does. It does. And visualization will help us to get better at something. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
Yes, because you're seeing yourself doing it over and over again. It's a technique that the military uses. Did you know that? All right, and this is very important. So these are divers, military divers. They have to assemble and disassemble equipment underwater. Underwater. All right, do you think does that sound difficult?
Yes.
All right, and so they visualize, they use visualization in order to practice it. They see themselves doing every small detail of the task, all right, and then when they are actually doing it, they're able to do it better and faster. What about athletes?
Skiers at the Olympics.
What?
Skiers at the Olympics.
Yes,
That's
they
very good.
they visualize the slopes, right?
The skaters too.
Skaters, yes, all kinds of athletes. They visualize. I mean, it's not just visualizing, they have to do it too. And they have to work out and they have to practice and all of that. But in addition to all of their training, they use the power of visualization. And they wouldn't be doing that if the success of it wasn't supported by the end results, right? Right? Yeah, so a lot of athletes, will visualize success in what they're trying to achieve. And you might be sitting here saying, well, so what? I'm not gonna be, joining the Olympics anytime soon. How can this possibly help me? Well, I'm here to tell you that it can.
Cornhole tonight.
Tonight's the night.
7 o'clock.
So before you go to cornhole tonight, I want you to all visualize that beanbag going right into all right? Visualize that. It can help you. All this I'm sharing to you is relatable. I just wanted you to know. Just wanted you to know
Too
that.
bad for the people that didn't come here and learn.
Well, see, you'll have an advantage on them,
Yes.
right? Yes. Okay, so last week we kind of wrapped it up with the hard problem of consciousness. Remember that? Yeah, that was kind of cool. At least I think so. I'm into all that kind of thing. So if we can only see just one tiny sliver of all that there is, all right, and that leads us to be more open-minded when we think about something like consciousness. We're grappling with this idea of the debate over the brain versus the mind. What's the difference between the brain and the mind? The brain is what? Physical. The mind is what? Yeah, yes, exactly. Yes, very, very good. All right. So we looked at originally in the late 1800s, at least in Europe and the United States, there was a study of consciousness, correct? Yeah, we were studying that. You know, Freud was studying dreams, and then we were talking about Carl Jung, and he was studying consciousness, and he comes up with something very clever. It's the collective unconscious, where he's finding that throughout time, there's common what?
Very common images.
Yes, Effie, excellent. Common images, common symbols, common archetypes that are being used no matter where you are. Even if...
The people haven't seen the previous one years and years ahead.
That's exact. Yes,
they're
that's it.
copying and they're doing the same
They're
thing.
not, yeah, they're not copying, they're coming up with it on their own. People that should have zero contact. All right, and I'm going to give you an illustration of that in just 1 second that I think we'll all understand. All right, and you know who this is?
Yes.
Joseph Campbell, and he writes The Power of Myth, and he's taking this idea of Jung, and he's saying it's true, there's all these types and symbols that we're all familiar with, no matter who we are or where we are in time, we all seem to go for the same symbolism. Where does it come from? It's something very, very primitive, very old, very, very far back, the beginning. And every story has a hero. Remember we saw this? Yes. All right, so most of our stories, most of our heroes, they go through the same plot line, the same pattern. And the stories that we're getting are coming from all different, everywhere. From peoples,
Beginning of time.
from the beginning of time, from peoples that had no, or supposedly had no contact. Yes, John?
What are you saying, we're born with something in our mind?
Well, I'm not saying it. Carl Jung is saying it. All right, that's his point. That somehow we're born with this collective, the collective unconscious is all of humanity having a base knowledge represented in these symbols. And this might help you to understand, okay? Last week we used Gilgamesh, we used Hercules, we used King Arthur. Today we're going to use
Noah?
how many cultures have a flood story?
A lot
Lot
of
of
About all of them.
Just about, did everyone hear David? Just about all of them have a flood story. All right? And then Noah, even as Joseph Campbell is explaining, heroes, right? There's a calling. The hero resists. Does Noah, like, I don't really want to, yeah, why did you pick me? Like Moses did the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Moses argued quite a lot with God. I'm not your guy. I am not your guy. Right? And then there's an adversary, and then there's a problem, and then there's otherworldly help. Do you see? It's over and over and over again. And that's what Carl Jung is saying, that there's some base primitive story that we all know, and it will manifest in these different cultures, but they follow a very, very spookily similar storyline. All right, and we can track that. We can track that. The Power of Myth is wonderful. I recommend that. All right, so we have this study of the unknown, of the conscience, and then all of a sudden we get this guy. Remember B.F. Skinner from last week? Yeah, and I'm not going to show you all my atoms and subatomic particles that I threw in there last time. But just know that it's about here, right? It's about here where we start looking at things in very concrete, black and white thinking. We need to be analytical about it, and that takes the mystery right out of studying the human being, doesn't it? What happens to the study of the mind? It falls to the wayside, doesn't it? And then we get into the study of subatomic particles, and then science feels like, well, we know what everything is, we know where everything is, and so this issue of, is there an afterlife? Well, as scientists, most of them will say, no, because we know that it's just your energy's just gonna convert into something else, all right? Because you see it and understand it as subatomic particles. And so everything becomes what?
Quantitative.
Yes, quantitative. Everything becomes quantitative. And any kind of study of the mind falls into the category of like the kooky New Age people. You know those kooky New Age people? They use crystals and stuff like that, those people. So it wasn't taken seriously at all, not at all. But then it starts to get this little bit of a comeback when we get into quantum physics.
Yeah.
Quantum physics, because quantum physics isn't black and white, hard, scientific data. It has probability. So when you're studying quantums, you can't get an accurate, final, absolute answer. You're only dealing in probabilities. Does that leave something open? Yeah, it leaves something open. And then we had this even crazier thing called quantum entanglement, remember? Quantum entanglement it says that two particles are somehow mysteriously connected. They're connected. So that if something affects this particle, even though the other one could be light years away, I said miles because I didn't want to scare you, but it could be a long, long way away. If something happens to this particle, that one has the same effect instantaneously, at the same time, simultaneously. And then that begs the question, what about the speed of light? But we will not get into that, all right? Sorry, I went off into my own thing there. Sorry about that. I won't do that to you. We'll move on. But this idea of studying the mind is so much older. It's very ethnocentric of us to think that in the United States that's the only place where it's being studied. Because in Eastern philosophy, how long have they been studying consciousness? Yes, for a very long time, for thousands of years. And they've been doing it in a scientific way, using a scientific method, in a respectable way, okay? Not in this New Age, Fruit Loop kind of thinking. All right?
So you don't believe in crystal balls?
I do not believe in crystal balls, no.
Okay.
All right. So in Western thought, our consciousness comes from where? From our brain. And in Eastern thought, consciousness what? Creates the brain. And then I tried to illustrate that because that's a really tough concept. And I tried to illustrate it with this. So in Western culture, our culture, this is the brain and this is consciousness right here in the brain. In Eastern, it's the opposite. This is consciousness. The cloud is the consciousness, and we are in the consciousness. We're in it. It's not something we created here, but that we're in it. We're in consciousness. And again, I will not go off the deep end on you. Just going to give you the concept and leave it at that. All right? Yes. We'll go to advanced. One day we'll do advanced head talks where I tell you all my crazy thoughts. All right. And so that brings us to that question: what happens when we die? What happens? All right? So now with this idea of quantum physics and this idea of, consciousness being something that surrounds us, and the other idea of understanding that we don't know very much, do we? And to be open-minded, Remember we saw that clip about the doctor last week? We saw the clip of the study. He spent decades studying what? Near-death experiences. Yeah, near-death experiences. And so what that does is that opens up the thinking, and it's becoming more acceptable to think that there is a consciousness beyond our physical body, even in Western culture, right? And then I wrapped it up last week with this idea of, if science needs those hard facts, that black and white data, if they need that, they might be getting it. Because remember, our thoughts are electrical impulses, correct? Our thoughts are electrical impulses, and now with today's technology, they're doing the unimaginable, which is they are able to see thoughts. Do you remember that from last week? To physically see thoughts. So what they do is they put someone in an MRI and show them a clip, right? And ask them to, and so while they're looking at that, they're thinking about the image, and then what is being mapped from the brain's activity. Now again, this is in its infancy. Yeah, Dennis the photographer was looking for clearer shots here. But they'll come. I'm sure they'll come. Yeah, that's not a really, precise image. But and then here was another set. Remember this set from last week? So I mean, that's pretty fascinating. Whoever would have thought that thoughts would be something that you could see, that you could track and see? Isn't that phenomenal? Like,
Scary.
Does that blow your mind?
Yeah.
Yes, it blows your mind. It is a little scary, right? Yeah, because for any good application, there could also be, something negative.
So Spock is alive, right?
What?
Spock is alive.
Oh, so Spock is alive? I just don't know what that means, but I'm sure.
Star Trek.
I don't know the reference. I mean, I know he's from Star Trek, but I don't know the reference.
Well, he's able to read.
So, do you feel like you have a better understanding of your own self
Yeah.
and your own abilities? And do you feel like you have a better or a little more control of what happens to your memory?
I think so.
Good, because you do. You do. You do. Now, next week, I'm going to a workshop. We all have to go to a workshop. So we will not be meeting next week. We'll be meeting in 2 weeks, and we're going to start our new series. We had a bunch of suggestions thrown out there. There were 3, and I did 2. So now I'm going to do the last one. And do you remember what that one was?
No.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
I remember it.
You remember that now?
Yeah, I do.
I know
Yeah.
all about the great women of history.
So starting next time, which is in 2 weeks, we will be starting our new series on women in history, and I hope you like my choices. They're listed in the. I'm starting with Catherine the Great. I couldn't get her out of my head because I'm going great women, Catherine the Great. I just could. So, anyways, we're doing Catherine the Great,
You can go back further than that.
and then what?
You can go back further than that.
I can go back further than that. Absolutely.
But she's interested.
Why are you going to start with Catherine?
Because I had to get it out of my head.
What don't you like about her? What do you got against Catherine?
All right, so we're going to start that in 2 weeks.
About her.
All right, and if you want to stay, I have something really special to show you. All right, but if you need to leave, then thank you for coming, and I will see you next time.
Okay.
Okay.